Section 1. You will hear a conversation about accommodation rules. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 3. You will see there is an example that has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first. Good morning, everyone. I'm your accommodation advisor. Well, firstly, welcome to Thomas House, which is one of the most popular accommodations in our university. I will give you an introduction about the house and answer your questions. The name of the house is Thomas House, so Thomas House has been chosen. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 3. Good morning, everyone. I'm your accommodation advisor. Well, firstly, welcome to Thomas House, which is one of the most popular accommodations in our university. I will give you an introduction about the house and answer your questions. As you know, the building was constructed in the middle of the 18th century and was used by the family of Thomas. That's, of course, how the house and university got its name. We repaired it and added some new and modern facilities last year.
Excuse me, advisor?
Yes?
What kind of facilities are there in Thomas House?
There are 3 floors. A front hall and a dining room are on the ground floor.
Does the house have a garden?
Of course.
And a garage?
No, we don't provide parking lot to students.
Okay.
A small gym with some new equipment is on the 2nd floor.
Does it have a computer room?
No, I mean a leisure room on the 2nd floor, and you can find a comfortable lounge with a big balcony on the same floor.
How about bedroom and bathroom?
They are both on the top.
How many students are there in one flat?
4 to 6.
I wonder if I have to share a bathroom with others.
No, we provide every student a bedroom and a bathroom.
Great.
Now, look at questions 4 to 10. Now listen carefully and answer questions 4 to 10. There are some rules in Thomas House. Firstly, smoking is not allowed in both your bedroom and the bathroom.
Does the house have a smoking section?
No, you can smoke on the balcony or outside the house.
Advisor, is there a laundry in the house?
Of course, laundry room is located on the right corner of the 2nd floor.
Sure.
But please do not use it after 11 o'clock.
Is it free to us?
In fact, you don't need to pay any bills which are included in your accommodation fee, but you have to pay laundry fee.
How much?
We offer 2 coin-operated washing machines. The large one is £2.50 and the small one is £1.60.
If the lounge has a time restriction?
Definitely. We ask all students to keep quiet and do not make noise after 11 o'clock.
We know there is a backyard in the house.
Yes.
if we can park our car there?
No, we do not allow parking in our yard.
OK. Could we invite some friends to hold a party in the garden or lounge?
We only allow party on weekends.
Fine.
The last rule is to pay attention to the opening time of the front hall. The door is locked at 11 p.m. and opened again at 6 a.m. in the next morning. Remember to take the front door key when you go out early or come back late.
How could we get the front door key?
You can go to Residence Office building and get your key in room 101.
Sure.
Well, any questions? This is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 2.
Section 2. You'll hear an introduction to a conference on computer system language learning. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 16.
Good morning everyone, and welcome to the second annual Wallabaloo Conference on Mastering Computer Languages. I hope you all had a good trip. Before we get underway with today's programme, let me fill you in as to what's on tap for tomorrow, Sunday, February 19th. At 9 a.m, right here in the main hall, we'll be hearing a lecture from Dr. John Smith about Computer as Teacher. Professor Smith from the University of Melbourne is a world-class expert in the field of computer-assisted education, and his talk promises to be both stimulating and informative. Immediately afterwards, at 10:30, there will be a presentation of papers by various delegates. That, however, will take place in the garden room on the ground floor. If you don't yet know, the garden room is also called the ballroom, and will be gathering at the west end, the slightly raised area called Level 2. Just look for the crowd. If you get lost, there are signs in the foyer. After all that thinking, talking and listening, I expect everyone will be a bit weary. So at 11:15, there will be a break for coffee, cookies and other light refreshments. These will be available at the aptly named refreshment stand, placed by the door back here in the main hall. Also, if you choose to skip the formal lunch, you can buy a packed lunch at the stand for a reasonable price. I strongly urge you, however, to join us at the formal lunch. That won't be till 1 o'clock sharp, so you have time to stroll about town a bit. We'll be eating at the Seaview restaurant. The restaurant is located right here in the hotel on the top floor. It's a good dozen flights of stairs, so I suggest you take the lift on the ground floor, eh? If you're not fond of fish, there's an all-you-can-eat barbecue available as well. They even offer wallaby meat. After lunch, we'll troop back downstairs to Level 2 in the ballroom for the presentation of further papers, which will begin at 2 p.m. Please try to be on time. I know you'll be a bit tired after lunch, but the ballroom echoes so with people coming in late. Thank you in advance. Once we've heard the papers, we'll break for afternoon tea at 3:10 p.m. No need to walk. The manager of the refreshment stand has graciously agreed to have tea served in the ballroom. He's even promised us some special scones, baked from a recipe of his dear old Scottish grandmother. Then, tea being drunk and scones munched, we'll retire here to the main hall for some closing remarks and questions. So, by 5 o'clock, we should have the conference wrapped up. But the fun isn't over. This is Australia, mates. We'll be flocking to the hotel's own Palm Lounge on the east side of the foyer for an informal reception. You can relax, mingle with the other delegates, and let your hair down a bit. This will run from 5:10 to 6:10, though you're free to stay as long as you like. The lounge manager has informed me that for the duration of the actual reception, you can have all-you-can-drink beer for $20 with purchase of an advance ticket.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20.
And yes, tickets can be purchased from any conference organizer or at the front desk any time between now and the start of the reception. I suggest you come by tomorrow evening to pick up the tickets, since the conference hall only holds 800 people. That way you can also get your journey planned ahead of time and be sure not to miss this truly memorable conference. If you want cocktails, however, I'm sorry, you'll have to pay for those at the regular price. Oh my goodness! Speaking of paying, I see I forgot to tell you a couple of things. The first is about lunch. The charge for the lunch will be $15 for all you delegates. If you have guests with you, the cost is $25 for the general public and $6.50 for children under the age of 10. That's $15 each, not total for everyone. Another item is about the lunch menu. I very much urge you to try the fish. I mean, look at the restaurant's name, the Sea View. As the name suggests, it is a famous seafood restaurant. The chef is a Basque from Spain, and he really gets quite put out when people ignore his fish specialities for burgers or barbecue. If fish isn't your thing, though, try the steak. He makes an exquisite filet mignon topped with blue cheese and mushrooms. Finally, if you'd like to buy a ticket, you can have both lunch and unlimited beer for $35. I should have mentioned that earlier, but I am a bit forgetful. Maybe I should avoid the beer after the conference, eh? Well, I've said my bit. Are there any questions?
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 3.
Section 3. Until recently, we knew almost nothing about how important bees are in maintaining natural diversity. Now we know more about them. We know, for example, that bees fall into two categories: wild bees and domesticated honeybees. A main reason for the domestication of bees has always been the production of honey and beeswax. We also know that honeybees are the dominant pollinators. In addition to bees, wasps, moths, butterflies, flies and beetles, as many as 1,500 species of bird and mammals serve as pollinators. Many crops of commercial importance, such as almond, cherry, avocado pear, watermelon, cucumber, rely on pollination by insects, and of these insects, bees are by far the most important. Animals and insects provide pollination services for over 3/4 of the stable crop plants, and for 80% of all flowering plants in the world. The economic value of animal pollinators to world agriculture has been estimated to be $200 billion per year. Pollination is one of nature's services to farmers, so think about this. If you eliminated the pollinators, it would take the food right out of our mouths. We biologists never imagined we'd see the day when wild plants or crops suffered from pollinator scarcity. But, unfortunately, that day has come. In fact, farmers in Mexico and the US are suffering the worst pollinator crisis in history. So, what happened? Any ideas? Alicia?
It is, because of natural enemies? I read something about a kind of parasite that's killed lots of bees.
It's true. An outbreak of parasitic mites has caused a steep decline in North American populations of honeybees. But parasites aren't the only factor.
What about the pesticides used on farms? All those chemicals must have an effect.
Most definitely, yes. Pesticides are a major factor. Both wild and domesticated bees are in serious trouble because of pesticides. In California, farm chemicals are killing around 10% of all the honeybee colonies. Agriculture in general is part of the problem. Another example is the monarch butterfly. Millions of monarchs from all over the US and southern Canada fly south every year in late summer. The monarch is the only butterfly that returns to a specific site year after year. Unfortunately, the herbicides used in the milkweed in the Great Plains are taking a toll on monarchs, and fewer of them are reaching their winter grounds in Mexico. In a recent field study at Cornell University in the US, it was found that monarch butterfly caterpillars eating corn-toxic pollen blown onto milkweed plants near cornfields had suffered significant adverse effects, leading to death of nearly 20% of the caterpillars.
Wow, 20%! That's so tragic.
And it's more than that. There are over 1,500 species of butterflies in the Indian subcontinent, but their population is dwindling because of environmental changes. Many man-made environmental changes like deforestation, extension of farming, and unrestricted urbanization are threatening some species of butterflies to extinction by destruction or disturbance of their larval as well as adult food plants, feeding grounds and shelters. Many of the most spectacular and endangered species have various levels of protection under local legislation. However, there is a major trade in the spectacular tropical species for incorporation in ornaments and souvenirs. The international demand for insects is greater than most people realize.
Yes, indeed. I once read an article about another important pollinator, the long-nosed bat. These amazing animals feed on cactus flowers, but they are having a tough time too. Some desert ranchers mistake them for vampire bats, and they've tried to poison them or dynamite the caves where they roost.
Yes, we must recognize that pollination is not a free service, and that investment and stewardship are required to protect and sustain it. So what can be done about this situation?
Well, wildlife farming, based on sustainable exploiting wild creatures, can help to save endangered species like butterflies and their habitats. Besides, gardeners, orchard growers, farmers, and urban dwellers can switch to more pollinator-friendly organic methods of cultivation to reduce wildlife exposures to insecticides, herbicides, and fungicides.
That's right. Actually, the focus on beekeeping needs to change from conventional honey production to crop pollination. That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 4. In a moment, you are going to hear a talk about movies. As you listen, answer questions 31 to 40. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 35. Now, listen carefully to the talk and answer questions 31 to 35.
Section 4. You will hear part of a lecture about African penguins. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40. Good morning, everyone. Today's lecture is about a type of adorable animal, the penguin. When you think of penguins, you may picture them surrounded by snow and ice. But not all penguins live where it's cold. African penguins live in the southern tip of Africa. They are usually found within 40 kilometres of the shore and on a number of its surrounding islands. African penguins are also known as jackass penguins because they make donkey-like braying sounds to communicate. African penguins can keep their body temperature at a stable level, but their land habitat can get quite warm, so there are a number of ways for them to stay cool. They limit their daylight movements on breeding sites on land to early mornings and early evenings to avoid too much sun. The pink glands above their eyes can help them cope with the temperate climates. Like other penguins, African penguins spend most of the day feeding in the ocean, which also helps keep them cool. Being a type of small to medium-sized penguin species, African penguins average about 60 centimetres tall and weigh up to 3.6 kilograms. They have a black stripe and a pattern of unique black spots on their chest. Males are larger than females and have larger beaks. Even though they are categorized as birds, African penguins aren't able to fly because of their heavy bones. Their wings are more like flippers that make them particularly suited for life in the water. When they're on land, their flippers and their tails help them keep their balance and walk upright. African penguins begin to breed at the average age of 4. When a male and female pair up, they tend to breed together for the rest of their lives. Most other penguins nest and lay their eggs out in the open, but African penguins have a different approach. They dig holes under bushes out of their own excrement, called guano, so they are sheltered from the sun and predators. The African penguins survive on a diet that is comprised mainly of marine organisms. They feed primarily on fish like sardines, along with the occasional squid and shellfish. But when normal food is in short supply, they eat tree roots as well. The streamlined body of the African penguin allows it to move through the water like a rocket, capable of reaching a speed of around 20 kilometers per hour when hunting for food. The African penguin's smaller size means that it has many predators both in the water and also on dry land. Their natural predators at sea include seals and sharks. The biggest threat to them on land is not just towards the adult penguins. The penguin chicks are sometimes taken by seagulls into the air and dropped from above. The seagulls could thus feed on them. At risk from predators, young penguins are protected for about 40 days after hatching by both parents. They will leave the colony when they are between 3 to 5 months old and will return a few years later. The entire surface of their body is densely covered with feathers, which fall off during the winter. This process is called molting and takes about 3 weeks to complete. During that time, they are unable to forage. Therefore, prior to this, African penguins spend about 5 weeks laying down fat deposits. They generally live between 10 to 15 years. However, many do not reach their full lifespan. Their population has drastically declined. Approximately 120,000 African penguins remain in the wild, and their population has decreased by 90% in the past 60 years. They are considered to be vulnerable and have been listed as being endangered. 2 major factors have contributed to their decline. They are struggling for nesting space due to human disruption and competing for food due to overfishing and pollution. With the limited number of breeding pairs, survivorship becomes difficult for African penguins. This makes them especially vulnerable as environmental conditions change or an outbreak of a disease occurs. For instance, avian malaria has caused 27% of the captive breeding penguins' deaths annually. The more genetic diversity there is within a species, the higher the likelihood that at least some of the individuals will adapt and survive. That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers. That is the end of the listening test.